Today we're going to be painting kitchen cupboards. I'm going to show you through each step how we're going to do this. You use some simple tools, it's really easy to do, really quick. I'm going to show you each step of the way. Now, when it comes to painting kitchens, there's loads of different varieties. There's melamine kitchens, there's solid oak kitchens, laminate kitchens. There's so many different methods to paint, and like behind me, there's actually a couple of different materials here which I'm going to show you. Really simple to do, really easy, and anyone can do it at home. So another reason to paint it yourself as well is cost. It's so simple and so cheap to do it yourself. So as you can see here, the unit I've got behind me is actually 3 different materials. When renovating, you've really got to keep costs down, so it really does help to start to shop about. So once these are all painted up, you won't be able to tell the difference in materials because each has got like a grain texture to it. So that'll all come through once it's all painted up, and it'll all look cohesive and lovely and detailed. I can't wait. So going through the tools that we need for this. So we have some 120 grit sandpaper and a sanding block. We've got a couple of different paint brushes. So we've got like a little thin one here, and also a really good one is like a skirting brush. That little peak gets in like all your little dells and details, and that's really, really handy. You've got a foam roller. That's the best roller to use on woodwork just because it gives like a really light coverage, but it doesn't take away that grain and clog it up. Really, really good for that. We've got a paint tray. Drill just to take our handles off and just detach our doors. We have got a tin of primer, a tin of good intentions, some sugar soap, and a screwdriver just to crack it open. First up, what we're going to do, we're going to start to sand our doors down. So I'm going to start off by taking the handles off, just unscrew them. If you are a bit lazy and don't want to take your doors off, you can leave. That wasn't meant to happen. You can leave your doors on. Just when you get on the inside of them, just where your hinges are, just make sure you tape them up and then use like a Stanley blade just to cut around that, just to make sure everything's covered. But we are going to take these doors off just because it is easier. If you are short of space, leave them on, just double tape it up and just make sure everything's covered. So if you're not doing the lazy way and you are going to take it off and do it properly, it's best kind of lay it down. At least you can kind of get over it. You can sand it down properly, getting all that detail, and then that kind of leave it to dry. Just make sure you've got enough space to lay them all out, and that you've got enough gap between each one. If you are going to be changing your handles, it's probably a good time to fill the holes. So if I was to change this handle from there to there, the best wood filler is this. It's a 2-part filler. So you mix up like a tiny little bit. It's hard as concrete. It's the best one I can recommend if you're going to change it. I have to change the rest of the kitchen handles over, and that's the one I use, just fill all of the gaps in. So if you fill it, leave it to dry, and then sand it, it should be good. So when you're sanding wood, you always go with the grain. So as you can see here, where them 2 bits are different, I'll sand that one up and that one across. So this is like a laminate melamine surface just because it was a lot cheaper, and when it's painted up you won't know the difference. In terms of the technique, it's exactly the same. With laminate, you just want to like rough up the texture because it's really, really smooth. Your primer will have nothing to bond to, so make sure you follow the same steps, put a little bit of pressure on just to sand it down, and then you should be able to feel the difference with your fingertips, what's smooth and what's not if you've missed any places. If it's just rough to the texture, like to the touch of your finger like that, then yeah, job's a good one. So before you start to prime it, it's always good to just give your piece a clean down to get rid of any dust, any grime, any little bits which will stop your paint bonding and also show up on your paint. Good idea before you start cleaning it down is just get a brush and just try and get rid of all that dust and then wipe it down. Just saves a lot of messing around. I always use sugar soap. God, that was a hard sentence. Just because it helps to lift all that dust and grit off the surface. If you don't have sugar soap, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure you've got like a damp cloth and you're just wiping that down just until your cloth comes out clean. So we are sanded, we're cleaned, we're dry. So now we're going to start to apply our first coat of primer. So what I always do first is just getting this detail. Now this is where this skirting brush comes in. Something that's got like a little peak like that, if you have any bit of detail, it just gets into those grooves really easy. And also you can get into corners much easier. So again, like we've done before, on, dab away any excess, and you're giving a light coat. Don't overload your door, just because it can clog it up and you can get some drip marks, you get a paint build up. It's better to do lighter coats, that you might need to do 2 coats of it than 1 thick one, just because it can run off and just not look very good. You can use a foam roller for this, just get even coverage. However, a brush will do it. What you're aiming for is just a good light coverage. It's not a matte emulsion, so you don't want full coverage where you can't see anything. Golden rule is if you can scratch it and it comes off, it's not bonded. So we'll just lightly, like we have before, dab away any excess and just make sure that your first bit goes up and down and you're spreading that out. So now that it's had a coat of primer and it's all dried, just make sure that it is before you start to do anything, and also it's a good idea to do like a bit of a scratch test. If you just lightly rub over it, if anything comes off, it's not bonded properly, but it has, so we can start to do it. Got good intentions here, so I'm going to start off just by cutting in. So again, same technique, a little bit of paint on your brush, and then just lightly go over that. Make sure that gets to every crevice. Because the golden rule is, you can always put on more, but you can't really take away. It's quite tricky to get that coverage, especially with eggshell. So just light as you can. Now we roller. So again, using a foam roller, just load up your brush just so you've got a bit of an even coverage, and then start to get that and give it like a light coat. Again, you don't want to be putting too much on. It's just always best, you get a better finish doing lighter coats than heavier coats. So now that's had its first coat, we're gonna leave that to dry for about 1 to 2 hours, and then we're gonna repeat those steps again, just to give it its second coat. Whilst we are waiting for that to dry, I'm gonna get on painting these end panels now. So repeating the same steps we did with the primer now, this is all touch dry, just cutting in, being really careful, trying to not get as much on the wall, even though it will have a touch up. And then once I have cut in, just using a foam roller to give it like a really, really light coat. So there you have it, how to paint kitchens. So we have sanded, we have primed, we have given it a couple of coats, and this is the finished product. So now we've got our integrated kitchen. Love the result, looked really good, looks even better in person, and it took a couple of hours to do, completely transformed, so well happy.